The sound of breaking glass still rings in my ears. It was a sharp crack, followed by the shudder of silence that grips a house when something is not right. I ran down the hallway, my heart racing, calling out my son's name. Daniel? The kitchen lights glared too bright, white against the midnight shadows. On the floor, the shards of a coffee mug spread like teeth, scattered across the tiles. And there she was, Lena, kneeling, her slender hands trembling as she picked up the pieces. My son's tutor. But it wasn't the broken mug that froze me. It was her face. Tear-streaked, pale, caught between fear and something she could not hide anymore. When she looked up, her eyes locked on mine. Eyes that had been nothing but calm, patient, and professional for months. Eyes that now burned with a storm she couldn't contain. I'm sorry, she whispered, voice cracked, fragile. For a moment the house seemed to stop breathing. The old clock on the wall ticked too loudly, and the hum of the fridge pressed into the silence. I wanted to ask her what was wrong, why she was crying in my kitchen at midnight, but all I could do was stand there, caught between 1,000 emotions I had no right to feel. Because the truth was, long before that night, before the mug broke, before the tears spilled, I had already crossed an invisible line. And I think she had too. Let me rewind. The first time I met Lena was in the middle of summer, the kind of heat that clings to your skin and makes the air heavy. I'd been worried about Daniel's grades. His teachers said he was smart but distracted. He needed guidance, someone patient enough to keep him on track. When she knocked on our door that afternoon, I didn't expect anything unusual. She was just supposed to be a tutor, someone who'd stay 2 hours twice a week and then leave. Nothing more, but when I opened the door, and she smiled, hesitant, polite, the sun catching the copper tones in her hair, I felt something shift. Not love, not yet. Just a recognition. Like when a song you've never heard before already feels familiar. She introduced herself with a calm voice, soft but clear. Hi, I'm Lena. You must be Daniel's father. I shook her hand, noticing the faint ink stains along her fingers, the kind you get from grading papers or scribbling notes too quickly. She carried a worn leather bag that seemed too heavy for her small frame, and when she stepped inside, she glanced around the house like she was memorizing it in one breath. Daniel came bounding down the stairs, restless as ever, and she knelt to his level with an ease I hadn't seen from any teacher before. She didn't scold him, didn't lecture. She asked him about his favorite stories. And within minutes my boy was laughing, eager, ready to learn. I should have left them alone then. I should have walked away and let her do her job. But I lingered in the doorway, listening. The way she encouraged him, the patience in her tone, it unsettled me. Not because it was wrong, but because it felt too rare, too gentle. It had been years since that kind of warmth had filled this house, and I, standing there with my arms crossed, felt the faintest ache in my chest. An ache I tried to ignore. I didn't know then what that ache would grow into. I didn't know that months later I would find myself frozen in my kitchen at midnight, staring at Lena's tear-streaked face, wondering if I had just stepped into a storm I could never escape. The memory of that first summer lingers like heat trapped in the walls. Lena came twice a week, every Tuesday and Friday, carrying that same leather bag and a quiet determination that filled the house. At first, I tried to keep my distance. She was Daniel's tutor, nothing more. I'd retreat to the living room, pretending to read the paper, pretending not to listen. But I always listened. Her voice had a rhythm to it, steady, coaxing Daniel through math problems and history lessons as if they were adventures, not assignments. "Let's think of it like this," she would say, tapping her pencil against his notebook. "Imagine you're the general in this battle. What would you do?" And Daniel, who hated history, suddenly leaned in with wide eyes, sketching strategies across the margins of his book. Sometimes, when he got frustrated, she didn't raise her voice or push harder. She simply sat back and waited, letting the silence stretch until he sighed and tried again. That patience God, I hadn't seen it in years. Not from teachers. Not from anyone. One Friday evening I overheard her say, "You're not bad at math, Daniel. You're just afraid of being wrong." And guess what? Being wrong is part of learning. The words weren't meant for me, but they landed heavy in my chest. Because if I was honest, I wasn't just listening to Lena help my son. I was hearing things I needed to hear myself. Over time, the house began to change in small, almost invisible ways. There was laughter again, Daniel's sharp, unguarded laugh that had grown rare since his mother left. His confidence returned, piece by piece, like sunlight breaking through shutters. And Lena, well, she seemed to bring a warmth that stretched beyond the lessons. I remember one evening, a storm rolling in, rain hammering against the windows. The power flickered, the lights went out, and the house plunged into darkness. Daniel shrieked, but Lena calmly struck a match, lit a candle she'd pulled from her bag, as if she carried one everywhere. The glow painted her face in gold and shadow. She told us a story, her voice low, weaving myths and legends while the storm raged outside. Daniel forgot to be afraid. And I forgot myself too. When the lights finally returned, she smiled as if nothing had happened, gathering her books, brushing wax from her fingertips. That night, I lay awake long after she left, hearing the echo of her voice over the rain. But here's the thing. The closer Lena became with Daniel, the more I found myself caught between gratitude and something I didn't dare name. I noticed her when I shouldn't have. The way her hair slipped loose from its knot when she bent over a page. The faint freckles that only showed in sunlight. The way she bit her lip when she was thinking. And then one evening, she caught me watching. Daniel had gone upstairs for a break, leaving us at the kitchen table. She was sorting through flashcards, her head tilted. When she looked up and our eyes met, it lasted only a second. But in that second, something passed between us. A flicker of awareness. She dropped her gaze, shuffled the cards too quickly. I cleared my throat, grabbed a glass of water I didn't need. Neither of us spoke about it. But from that night on, every time she came to the house, I felt it. A current, quiet but undeniable, running beneath the surface. And I knew, whether I wanted to admit it or not, that the line between us was thinning. The line between us might have been invisible, but it grew sharper with every passing week. I told myself it was nothing, just admiration, just respect. But late at night, when the house was quiet, I couldn't lie to myself anymore. One Saturday morning I found Daniel at the dining table, already waiting for his lesson, his pencils neatly lined up. He was excited, he always was now. "Dad," he said, eyes bright, "do you think Miss Lena will stay after today? Maybe for dinner?" His words caught me off guard. "Dinner?" I repeated. "Yeah," he shrugged. "She feels like family. Double quotes, family. The word hung in the air. heavy, dangerous. When the doorbell rang, Lena stood there in her usual soft cardigan, hair swept into a loose bun, books balanced against her hip. She smiled politely, but there was something tired in her eyes that day, something I hadn't noticed before. The lesson went as usual until Daniel asked her outright, "Miss Lena, do you want to have dinner with us?" She froze, looking first at him, then at me. Her lips parted as though to refuse, but Daniel's eager face softened her hesitation. "If it's all right with your dad," she said gently. My throat tightened. "Of course," I managed. "We'd be glad to have you." That evening, the three of us sat around the table like something out of a picture I'd lost long ago. Roast chicken, potatoes, candlelight. Daniel chatted endlessly, his laughter spilling into every corner of the room. I watched Lena listen to him, truly listen, her smile warm and unforced. She asked him questions, teased him lightly, encouraged him when he stumbled over a story. And for a fleeting moment I allowed myself to imagine that this was not temporary, not fleeting. That she belonged here, at this table, with us. But then I noticed the way her smile faltered when she thought no one was looking. The way her hand lingered on her glass, absent, distracted. "Everything all right?" I asked quietly when Daniel ran upstairs to fetch something he'd forgotten. She startled, her fork slipping against the plate. "Oh, yes, I'm fine," but her voice betrayed her. Thin, guarded. "You don't look fine," I said, softer this time. Her eyes darted to the stairs, then back to me. For a moment I thought she might open up, but she simply shook her head. "It's nothing, really." And just like that, the walls were back up. After dinner, she gathered her bag, thanked me, and stepped out into the night air. I stood at the doorway, watching her walk away under the dim streetlight. She moved quickly, her shoulders slightly hunched, as if carrying more than just the weight of her books. I closed the door, unsettled. That night, Daniel came to my room, sleepy-eyed but thoughtful. "Dad," he murmured, "do you think Miss Lena is sad?" His question hit me like a stone. Children see things adults pretend not to. "Yes," I admitted, brushing his hair back. "I think maybe she is." "Then we should help her," he said simply. Before drifting into sleep, I lay awake long after, staring at the ceiling, haunted by the look in Lena's eyes, because Daniel was right. She was sad. I was beginning to realize that behind her calm exterior, Lena carried secrets I had no part in. Secrets that, sooner or later, would collide with whatever fragile bond was forming between us. The weeks that followed were marked by small glimpses, shadows, slipping through the cracks of Lena's carefully held composure, a hesitation before answering simple questions, a flinch at sudden noises, the way her eyes sometimes drifted toward the window as if expecting something or someone. I noticed it all. And I noticed, too, how she worked harder to mask it when Daniel was around, never letting her guard drop in front of him. For his sake, she stayed steady. But late in the evenings, when the lessons stretched longer than planned, and Daniel would wander off to bed, the weight of her silence pressed heavier on the room. One evening, as autumn settled in, I found her lingering by the bookshelf after Daniel had gone upstairs. She traced the spine of an old novel absently, not really reading the titles. The lamplight painted her face in soft amber, but her eyes were far away. "You like to read?" I asked, just to fill the silence. Her lips curved faintly, but it wasn't quite a smile. "I used to," she murmured, What stopped you?" Her hand froze on the shelf. She didn't answer at first. Then, with a careful breath, she said, "Life has a way of rearranging your priorities." The words lingered between us, brittle and unspoken with meaning. I wanted to push, to ask what life had taken from her, but the guarded tone told me she wouldn't let me in. Not yet. The first real crack came by accident. It was a cold Friday night. Rain streaking the windows, the streets glistening outside. Lena arrived soaked, clutching her bag close as though shielding it from the downpour. I rushed to take her coat, but when she slipped it off, I saw it an ugly bruise along her wrist, half hidden by her sleeve. She noticed my eyes, pulled the fabric back down in an instant. "It's nothing," she said quickly. Too quickly. "Lena," I began, my voice firmer than I intended. "That's not nothing." She shook her head, backing away as though cornered. "Please just don't." I stopped. I saw the panic rising in her, the way her breathing grew shallow, her hands clenching tight. It was more than embarrassment. It was fear. And then Daniel bounded into the room, calling her name, completely oblivious. Instantly, Lena pulled herself together, kneeling to greet him with a smile so convincing it would have fooled anyone except me. That night, after she left, I couldn't sleep. The bruise haunted me. I replayed every glance, every hesitation, every shadow in her expression. Someone was hurting her, but she didn't want to tell, and so I wrestled with questions that had no easy answers. How far could I push before breaking the fragile trust she had with me, or worse, with Daniel? What if my interference drove her away entirely, leaving Daniel confused, abandoned all over again? I wanted to protect her. I wanted to protect my son. But most of all, I wanted to understand the truth she was so desperately hiding. The next time she came, I decided to wait, to listen, to let the silence speak for her. And it did. In the smallest ways at first, a missed word here, a slip of tone there, until finally, in the hush of a late evening lesson, Lena let her guard slip. She looked at me with eyes heavy, with something deeper than weariness, and whispered words I wasn't ready for. "There are things you don't know about me, things I can't keep hiding forever." Her words hung in the air, trembling. "There are things you don't know about me, things I can't keep hiding forever." The room felt smaller. The lamplight flickered, casting restless shadows across the walls. I leaned forward, careful, my voice low. "Then tell me." Lena's fingers twisted together in her lap. She stared down at them, silent for so long I thought she'd retreat again. But then she spoke barely above a whisper. "I left someone." The weight of those words pressed hard. "Left? Someone?" I echoed. Her jaw tightened. "A man. Someone I should have walked away from years ago. But I didn't. I was too afraid." Her eyes flicked up at me, searching for judgment. I offered none, only patience. She exhaled shakily, continued. "He wasn't always cruel. At first, he was. Charming. Smarter than me. Confident. He made me believe I couldn't do better, that no one else would want me. And little by little he chipped away at me, until I didn't recognize myself anymore." Her voice cracked, but she pressed on. "When he wasn't shouting, he was silent. When he wasn't silent, he was breaking something. And sometimes—" Her hand drifted unconsciously to her wrist. The bruise I'd seen still faint beneath the skin. My chest tightened with anger I struggled to keep buried. I wanted to find this man. I wanted to end whatever shadow he still cast over her. But I kept my voice steady. You left him, I said, not as a question, but as a truth. I tried. A bitter laugh escaped her. But leaving someone like him isn't clean. He doesn't just let go. He follows. He waits. He reminds me he's still out there. For a long time, silence stretched between us, broken only by the ticking of the clock. I wanted to reach across the table, to take her trembling hands in mine, but I didn't. I knew she wasn't ready for that. Instead, I asked the only thing that mattered. Are you safe now? Her eyes glistened, and for the first time since I'd met her, her voice faltered with uncertainty. I don't know. That night, after she left, I sat in the quiet house, Daniel asleep upstairs, my own thoughts a storm. Part of me wished I'd never asked, that I could keep seeing her only as the bright, patient teacher who had saved my son from slipping. But the truth was out now, raw and unshakable. She wasn't just a tutor. She was a woman carrying scars I could not see, running from a past that might still be chasing her, and I foolishly, recklessly was already too far gone. The days that followed felt charged, like the air before a storm. Every time Lena came, I noticed more. The cautious way she checked the street before walking up to the door, the way she jumped at small sounds. Daniel, oblivious, only grew closer to her, clinging to her stories, her kindness. One evening, he turned to me after she left and said, "Dad, I think Miss Lena smiles more when you're around." I didn't know how to answer, because while my son saw warmth, I saw fragility, and I knew deep down that whatever storm Lena was escaping hadn't finished with her yet. It started with a car, a black sedan parked across the street one evening, while Lena was inside with Daniel. At first, I didn't think much of it. People visited the neighborhood all the time. But when I glanced out the window a second time, the car was still there. No one got out. The engine idled faintly, a low hum under the night air. I felt my skin prickle. Inside, Lena was leaning over Daniel's math homework, patient as always, her hair falling in loose strands around her face. She didn't notice my restless pacing by the window. When the lesson ended and she gathered her things, I offered to walk her out. She hesitated, then nodded. The car was gone by the time we stepped outside. But the way she stiffened at the empty curb told me everything. You saw it, too, I said quietly, her face drained of color. She hugged her bag close, shaking her head. "It's nothing. Just please don't ask." The words were sharp, final. She hurried down the walkway, disappearing into the night. I barely slept that night. Images of that car haunted me. Every instinct screamed that it wasn't random. And the bruise, the fear in her eyes, the man she'd spoken of, it all connected in ways I didn't want to believe. The next day, I tried to focus on work, but my mind kept circling back. What if he had found her? What if he was waiting, watching? What if the safety of my son, of all of us, was unraveling without me even realizing it? By the time Lena arrived for the next lesson, I'd resolved to ask her again. But when she walked in, something in her face stopped me. Her eyes were red-rimmed, as if she'd been crying. She greeted Daniel warmly, but her voice was softer, strained. I couldn't press her. Not with him there. So I waited. When the lesson ended and Daniel bounded upstairs, I finally spoke. "Lena, that car the other night, who was it?" Her hands froze on her bag strap. She didn't look at me. I don't know. That's not true, I said, more firmly than I intended. Her head snapped up, eyes blazing with fear and anger. You don't understand. Asking questions only makes it worse. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. Then help me understand. Because if someone is watching you, following you, he could follow you here. He could follow you to Daniel. Her breath hitched at his name. She shook her head violently, clutching her bag tighter. I never wanted to bring this into your home, she whispered. That's why I keep quiet. That's why I pretend everything's fine. Lena. But she was already at the door, fumbling with the handle. I shouldn't have come tonight. I shouldn't be here at all. And then she was gone. The silence she left behind was suffocating. I stood in the empty kitchen, heart pounding, torn between anger and fear. I wanted to protect her. I wanted to protect my son. But for the first time, I realized those two desires might collide, because if her past had found her, it had found us too. The house felt different after she left, that night hollow, uneasy. Even Daniel noticed. Dad, he asked the next morning, pouring too much cereal into his bowl, why did Miss Lena leave so fast yesterday? I forced a steady tone. She just wasn't feeling well, but Daniel frowned, unconvinced. She looked scared. Children always see more than we want them to. Days passed, and Lena didn't come back. No texts, no calls. Silence where there had once been warmth. I tried to focus on Daniel's homework myself, but he resisted, restless without her. He missed her stories, her patience. And if I was honest, so did I. The absence of her voice left the house too quiet. By the 5th day, I decided I couldn't wait any longer. I had her address listed on the small contract she'd signed at the beginning. A part of me knew I shouldn't go, that it crossed another line I had no right to cross. But worry pushed me past hesitation. Her apartment was on the edge of town, in a building that had seen better years. The hallway smelled of damp carpet and stale cigarettes. I knocked once, twice. The door opened a crack, and there she was. Her face was pale, her eyes ringed with shadows. She looked smaller somehow, shrunken inside her own clothes. Why are you here? She whispered, glancing nervously down the hall. I was worried, I said simply. You shouldn't have come? Her voice trembled. Lena, talk to me, please. The door stayed half-closed between us. She looked at me for a long moment, then finally let it swing wider. Inside. The apartment was sparse bare walls, a single worn couch, books piled in uneven stacks. On the counter sat a cup of cold coffee, untouched. I stepped inside cautiously. You've been gone for days. Daniel asks about you every night. Her expression broke at his name, tears gathering in her eyes. He deserves better than this. Better than me bringing danger into his life? What danger? I pressed and then it came. The words I'd half expected, but still wasn't ready for. He found me. My stomach dropped. She sank onto the couch, her hands trembling. The car. That was him. He doesn't stop. No matter where I go, he finds me. And I thought I was safe this time. Lena? Her voice cracked. If he knew I was here, if he knew I was at your house, he could hurt Daniel. He would. He uses whatever he can to punish me. I felt a surge of heat in my chest, anger sharp and blinding. Then we don't let him. We fight back. You don't have to do this alone. But she shook her head, tears spilling freely now. You don't know him. You don't know what he's capable of. At that moment, a noise echoed from the hallway outside, a door slamming, heavy footsteps passing by. Lena flinched, her whole body tensing like a cornered animal. I moved instinctively, placing myself between her and the door. The footsteps faded, leaving only silence. She buried her face in her hands, whispering, "I can't keep running forever." And I realized, with a sinking certainty, that her past wasn't just creeping closer. It was already here. That night, after leaving Lena's apartment, I couldn't shake the image of her trembling on the couch, whispering that she couldn't run forever. I drove home with my jaw clenched, my hands gripping the wheel too tight. Every shadow on the road felt like a threat. When I finally pulled into the driveway, Daniel was waiting at the window, waving. His innocence, his unshaken joy, it struck me with a force that nearly knocked me breathless. Because if Lena was right, if the man was truly watching her, then he might already know where we lived. I told myself to stay calm, to wait, to think. But calm has a way of breaking when the danger you fear comes pounding at your door. It happened 2 nights later. The knock came late, when the house was quiet and Daniel was upstairs brushing his teeth. At first, I thought it was Lena. Maybe she had decided to come back, to trust me. But when I opened the door, it wasn't her Dot, it was him. I didn't need an introduction to know. He stood there in the porch light, tall, broad-shouldered, his suit rumpled like he hadn't slept in days. His smile was wrong too wide, too practiced, stretched over something darker. "Evening," he said smoothly, as if this were some casual visit. "You must be the man whose son my Lena's been teaching." The way he said my Lena churned my stomach. I didn't step aside. "She's not here." "Oh, I know she's not here." His eyes flicked past me, scanning the hallway, the stairs. His voice dropped, silk over steel. "But she's been spending a lot of time here, hasn't she?" I steadied my voice. "You should leave." He chuckled softly, a sound that didn't belong on a quiet street. "Leave? No, no. See, I just came to thank you for taking such good care of her while she plays her little games." From upstairs, Daniel's voice rang out, innocent and bright. "Dad? Who is it?" The man's smile sharpened. Ah, the boy. Something primal surged in me. I stepped forward, blocking the view inside completely. My voice came low, unshaken. "If you so much as look at my son again, I will end this conversation in ways you don't want to imagine." For a moment, the mask slipped. His eyes narrowed, the charm falling away to reveal the threat beneath. But then, just as quickly, the smile returned. "Relax," he said, drawing the word out. "I only came to remind you that she belongs to me. She always has, and she always will." He leaned closer, his breath hot and sour. "And if you think you can change that, you're a fool." I held his gaze, refusing to flinch. Inside, my heart thundered, but outwardly I stayed stone. Finally, he stepped back, adjusting his jacket with mock politeness. "Good chat?" "Tell her I said hello." And then he was gone, vanishing into the night like he'd never been there at all. I closed the door, my hands shaking now, leaning against the frame as if it were the only thing holding me up. Daniel appeared at the top of the stairs, toothbrush still in hand. "Dad? Who was it?" I forced my voice steady. No one important. Go finish up. He stared at me a moment longer, sensing more than I said. Then he nodded slowly and disappeared back into the bathroom. But I knew the truth. Storm wasn't coming anymore. Goddard was already inside our walls. Sleep didn't come that night. I sat in the dark living room long after Daniel drifted off, the house creaking around me, every sound magnified. The man's words replayed, looping endlessly. She belongs to me. It was a claim, not of love, but of ownership. And it sickened me. By morning, my resolve had hardened. I couldn't protect Daniel or myself by silence. Lena needed to know what had happened, whether she wanted to or not. She answered the door cautiously, her eyes ringed with exhaustion. The moment she saw me, though, her shoulders stiffened. "What are you doing here?" she asked. "He came to my house." The color drained from her face. "No, yes, he knows. He saw Daniel." Her hands trembled as she pressed them to her mouth. I stepped inside before she could protest. "You have to stop running," I said. "This won't end unless we face him." She shook her head violently. "You don't understand. You can't face him. He doesn't play fair. He'll tear apart anyone who gets in his way." "Then let him try." My voice rose, sharper than I meant. "Because I'll be damned if I let him walk into my home, look at my son, and threaten us both." Her eyes shimmered, caught between fear and something deeper. "Why are you doing this? Why do you care so much?" I took a step closer, lowering my voice. "Because somewhere along the way, I stopped seeing you as just Daniel's tutor. You're more than that. To him, to me." She froze. For a long moment, neither of us moved. The room seemed to hold its breath. Finally, she whispered, "If you mean that, then you need to know the whole truth." We sat at her table, the morning light slanting through the blinds. Her voice was steady, but her fingers traced restless patterns on the wood. "I met him when I was 19, she began. "He was older, powerful, the kind of man who made promises that felt like destiny. I thought I was in love. By the time I realized what he really was, I was already trapped. He controlled everything, my money, my family, my choices. And when I tried to leave," she faltered, "he made sure I knew what would happen if I ever ran." Her eyes lifted to mine. "I've been looking over my shoulder ever since." I felt anger rise, hot and unrelenting, not at her, but at the man who had twisted love into possession. "You're not alone anymore," I said. "He doesn't get to win this time." Tears slipped down her cheeks. She let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. "You don't know what you're signing up for." "Maybe not," I admitted. "But I know what I'm fighting for." A silence settled, fragile but charged. Her hand, almost unconsciously, brushed against mine on the table. She didn't pull away. For the first time since I met her, I saw something shift in her eyes, not fear, not just survival, but a flicker of trust. Then her phone buzzed. The screen lit up with a single message. No name, just words. "You can't hide behind him forever." Her face drained of color. She turned the phone toward me. The man was watching us. Even now. And I understood. The fight wasn't waiting outside anymore. It was here, closing in. The night of the confrontation felt heavier than any storm I'd ever known. The air was thick, suffocating, the kind of quiet that told you something was coming. I'd locked every door, every window. Daniel was at my sister's house across town, safe for now. Lena sat on the couch, her body rigid, eyes fixed on the front door like it was already bleeding shadows. When the knock finally came, it wasn't a surprise. Slow, deliberate. The kind of knock meant to say, "I'm not leaving until you open." I rose, pulse pounding, and Lena grabbed my arm. "Don't," she whispered. Her grip was iron, her eyes wide. "He's not going away," I said. "Not this time." I pulled free and opened the door. There he was, immaculate tonight, as if he'd dressed for war. A crisp suit, polished shoes, that same poisoned smile. He stepped inside without waiting for an invitation, filling the room with his presence like a spreading fire. "Ah," he said, his gaze sliding to Lena. "There you are, darling. Running out of places to hide?" Lena shrank back, but I moved between them. "You're done," I said flatly. His eyes flicked to me, amused. "Done? No. See, men like me don't get done. We decide when things end. You don't decide anything anymore." I didn't shout. My voice was low, steady, the way you speak when there's no more room for fear. He tilted his head, studying me like a puzzle he didn't care to solve. "You think standing in my way makes you a hero? She's mine. Always has been." Lena's voice cut through then, sharp with a tremor. "I was never yours. Not once. You chained me, you scared me, but you never had my heart." For the first time his smile cracked. His eyes darkened, his jaw tightening. "You ungrateful little—" "Enough." I stepped closer, my chest nearly brushing his. "You so much as raise your hand, and it won't be words between us. You'll find out exactly what kind of man I am when someone threatens the people I love." The word hung there. Love. Lena's breath hitched behind me. His nostrils flared. He leaned in, whispering like a hiss. "You can't protect her forever. Men like me, we leave scars. Even when we're gone." I held his stare. "Then you'll have to watch me prove you wrong." For a beat, silence burned between us. Then, almost casually, he smoothed his tie and gave a laugh short, hollow. "You think you've won something tonight," he said. "But you'll never be free." "Not really." He turned, his footsteps echoing against the hardwood, and let himself out. The door clicked shut. The house seemed to exhale. Lena collapsed against me, her hands trembling, her face buried in my chest. I wrapped my arms around her, feeling the weight of years fall from her shoulders. She whispered, broken and raw, "You don't know what you've done." I kissed the top of her head. "I know exactly what I've done. I've chosen you, and I'll keep choosing you, no matter what comes." Outside, the night stretched on, uncertain, but inside, something shifted. The fear hadn't vanished, but it no longer ruled us. For the first time, Lena wasn't running. She was standing still, with me. And though the storm hadn't passed, we were no longer alone in it. Sometimes love isn't about grand gestures. It's about standing firm when someone else can't, refusing to let fear dictate the future. In choosing courage over silence, we discovered that freedom is found not in running, but in standing together.